Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Share Your Why podcast. I'm so excited today because I have a good friend of mine, Lindsay Wrege from 321 Coffee here with us. Super excited to have a conversation with her about a wide variety of topics today. So this is going to be a really fun one. Let me introduce Lindsay real quick. So I've known her for a while now. She's a rising senior here at NC State, co-founder and CEO at 321 Coffee, which is actually a nonprofit coffee shop located right here in Raleigh, North Carolina, that employs people with disabilities. Lindsay, let me go ahead and hand it off to you. If you could introduce yourself, let's get it started.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here. Like Thomas mentioned, rising senior, founder and CEO of 321 Coffee. This has definitely been a passion project of mine, so I'm excited to tell you more about how I got started with this, the why behind it, the impact that we've made. And I'm just excited to be here today. So thanks for having me, Thomas.
Yeah, of course. Why don't you kick it off and just kind of tell us the whole story? I remember sitting down with you about 6 months ago and hearing the whole story and being super inspired by it. So just, from the beginning, tell us, where do you come from? What were you motivated by, and how did you end up where you are today?
Yeah, so it kind of dates back to elementary school. So when I was in elementary school, I ended up switching schools in third grade. I didn't know anyone in the new classroom, and my first friends were with three girls that each have a disability. And at the time, that didn't really mean much to me. So we, played together at recess. We would carpool to dance, just normal third grade friend things. And then we grew up still being great friends. But because of them, I got very involved into the special needs community. If you're familiar, or if you're not familiar, there's a whole variety of recreational activities that are made adaptive for this community. So tennis, baseball, basketball, surfing, soccer, it's incredible. There's all sorts of these different sports. You name it, they were doing it. They would always say, Lindsay, would you like to join? I would always say yes. So just through them, I got really immersed in this whole community, this community of support for one another, this sort of like open mind of you can do whatever you want to do. Sometimes you just need some slight modifications and adaptations. And I just loved it. I loved the impact that they had on each other, that they had on me. And it was just such a great experience of a way to have a childhood and an upbringing. So then we all kind of grew up. We got towards high school graduation. Personally, I remember just being completely overwhelmed with sort of what was next, college applications, summer internships. Oh my gosh, could I study abroad? Just all this whole world of possibilities. But for these girls, that wasn't the case. Like I said, there's all sorts of recreational activities and support programs for this community and people in this community, but professionally, there's really not, which is unfortunate. And so, they talked about like, oh, maybe I could get a job at Food Line. Maybe I could get a job at this pet supplies company. And they sometimes would, which was great. But then 3 years would go by and they would still be cleaning bathrooms, which is just awful. These people are capable of a lot more. They want to learn. They want to contribute. They just aren't always given an opportunity. And so that is kind of like the nugget that led me to want to start something like 321 Coffee, creating a place for adults in this community to shine, to have a place to contribute, to have something to be a part of. And on a larger scale, have a place just in society for people to come in and to see people with disabilities working at a high level, contributing to a company at the forefront of a business. And so I started at freshman year at NC State, sort of had this big, ambitious picture in mind, shared the idea with some friends. Luckily, it was the right friends who said, I would love to help you with something like that. So we said, all right, let's see what we can create.
Thank you so much for sharing. What's it been like, leading a team and working with the people you're just speaking about?
So we started off fall of 2017, which was my freshman year. So it's been coming up on 3 years. And it's definitely gone through a lot of different iterations. So in the beginning, we were a student organization on campus. We did catering events around campus and around Raleigh. So I reached out to some friends of mine who have a disability to say, hey, would you be interested in volunteering with 321 Coffee? This is sort of what I'm trying to start. We then went to different events and said, hey, can we just come and we'll serve coffee for free? And luckily, free coffee is not something that gets denied very often. So we were pretty popular. And so we literally just we rented folding tables from the bookstore. We got Starbucks coffee. And at our first event, we just showed up and we just served coffee to get our name out there. And it worked, which was so awesome to see. I remember that day and seeing it all set up and being like, oh my gosh, we are a coffee shop. And like, it's so funny because now I feel like, oh, we were nothing back then. But at the time, like I was so proud of that. And like when you get that first event, then it's like, okay, we got to do this again. So then it's the second event. And we would always come out from these events with like a next step and a next opportunity. And that was people seeing us and saying, oh my gosh, I would love for my son or daughter to come work for you guys. Or, oh my gosh, I'm an art teacher. If you ever need help making a mural, please let me know. And it was just amazing to see the community really embrace this mission and just want to offer whatever they could, which I think was such a beautiful thing. And I continue to see that with 321. And I think it just shows what can be created when people work together, and especially for a mission. So that was sort of, we did those catering events for the whole first year. We ended up getting a little bit more legit than Starbucks. I'm glad to say we got connected with a local roaster. And so then we did those. And then what the feedback we kept getting was people would ask, where can I find you next time? And at the time we didn't really have an answer because we were just doing those one-off events. And so we wanted to find a spot where we could be a little bit more permanently, but wasn't quite like a storefront brick and mortar lease. Like we weren't there yet. And so we opened on Saturdays at the State Farmers Market, which is pretty close to campus. And so they have a space, just like a tent, and you show up in the morning, set all your stuff up, do whatever you're going to do throughout the day, and then shut it all back down at the end of the day. So we did that for a couple months. And it honestly was such a pain in the butt. Every morning getting there at like 6 a.m. We had this trailer of all of our like equipment, but it worked. It served the purpose that we were looking for. We had started getting regular customers. We started having a place to send people to, a place for our volunteers to work regularly. And so it, like I said, it definitely served the purpose of what we were wanting. It just wasn't quite the end goal yet. So a couple months went by, and then we were offered an indoor space at the farmers market. So we moved in there, and that's where we really got to set up a more permanent spot. So we bought an espresso machine, we got cabinets, we're not using my dorm room as a storage unit anymore. We had like real storage. And we set up a pretty small scale, but fully functioning coffee shop. And so that, when we opened there, that was a little over a year ago. I mean, that was the gold mine for us. You know, we finally had like a regular spot for people to find us on a regular basis. We expanded our days, we expanded our menu, and just seeing that work and seeing like the community continue to come and support us every weekend, we recognized that we had like a viable business model, and we were able to take on employees, which was really, really significant, just because like that mission I was telling you about, we wanted to create employment opportunities. It was great that we had this volunteer work experience, but on employment is really what we were going for. So that was a huge milestone for 321. We took on employees in the fall of 2019, hired 21 adults, and we offer above minimum wage starting rates. So that's something we're really proud of. And then since then, we just continue to find ways to expand. So we recently just expanded our space at the farmers market. We're going to begin roasting our own beans, which we're very excited about. And that's just going to allow us to create a new job position within our company, one that works with different skills and different strengths. And it's going to allow us to just engage with our following in a new way. You know, people, if they're not in Raleigh, they can still have a piece of 321 with them in their homes on a regular basis.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lindsay. I appreciate it. You know, when I first heard your story and your mission and the purpose that drives you, it really resonated with me.
It means a lot. And I mean, I love seeing like the way that people are just connected to this community, because it's a small world.
That's right. That's right. So, you know, the podcast is Share Your Why. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, you know, your purpose and your mission specifically, and kind of how setting that for you might have impacted your actions or impacted the course of your life.
I think a big thing that resonates with me is doing, like this concept of doing, and whether that is for the employees, like wanting to have something where they can do. And like for us, that's this job that we've created, and letting them have that platform. You know, for myself and the other people that I started 321 Coffee with, it's having a place like 321 to go and do. I think that so many people have ideas of stuff that they would like to do, and they think about it and they plan it. But I want to help people get to the part where they can, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do today? What are you going to do tomorrow? It doesn't have to be like, if you've got this goal, like think of 321 for this storefront, for this brick and mortar in downtown. You don't need to go and do by signing the lease. You can do by getting Starbucks and serving coffee at an event. And then hopefully in doing more and more and more, you can get to that end goal. But I personally get really excited about just putting action to your ideas, and especially ones that really resonate with you and stick in the back of your head, and giving people the confidence and the support to do that.
That's awesome. I love it. Can you speak towards a little bit, maybe you have a story or two that would be like a standout relationship that you've had with somebody at 321, somebody you've gotten to work with? I'd love to hear any story you had.
The one person that always comes to mind, his name is Sam. He was actually one of our first ever volunteers. So Sam has Down syndrome. He's originally from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And when we first started that we were going to do this thing. We're going to call it 321 Coffee. We have no track record. We have no history. No one even knows really who I am, but we needed volunteers. And luckily Sam and his family somehow or another heard about 321 Coffee and said, Sam would he was in. He was excited to be a part of it. We were excited to have him. And so he drove from Rocky Mount, which is about an hour's drive, to volunteer with 321. Sam was just excellent. I mean, rock star, totally picked everything up. Perfect. Just great. So then when we started doing more events, Sam kept coming. But I was kind of surprised that he was just continuing to drive from Rocky Mount. At one point, we started doing regular events. So every Monday morning, we would go to serve coffee at the football team. And every Monday morning, Sam would come and volunteer with us, which again was amazing. But I was just a little bit I didn't quite understand why this was happening. And so I talked to him, I talked to his parents, and I just learned that I guess Rocky Mountain, where he was from, did not have the support systems in place for Sam to have employment. And I'm telling you, Sam can run 321 Coffee without me. I just get in his way. He is so independent. He is so capable. He's so driven. And it was just this awful realization that where he's from, he could not find anything. And so he was willing to do that drive just to volunteer. And so then about a year later, Sam ended up moving to Raleigh to live independently to grow his involvement with 321, which is, that's amazing. I remember learning that and just getting goosebumps because it just showed how much they trusted and believed in 321 and what we were doing. And so he did that, which, living independently, that in and of itself is a huge, huge milestone, a huge step towards independence for people with disabilities. So, huge kudos to Sam for that. And then the success story just kind of keeps growing. So then he's living in Raleigh. He becomes one of our first employees, again, rock star, continues going and working with the state football team and ends up getting hired by the state football team, which is just such a great point of the story, because I think it shows that he can contribute, he can do a lot, and it's people seeing that and recognizing that and changing their perspective and finding ways of maybe I could incorporate Sam into my workforce, which is totally the goal of what we're going towards. And then you combine that with the fact that Sam considers Coach Dave Doran his second dad. And it's just the best. And so I would definitely say that now Sam serves as a leader within 321 Coffee, a leader for our employees of, a goal that they want to hit in the future. And I'm very proud to have him as a part of our organization.
Wow, that's really cool to just see the impact that you've been able to have on people, even only being around for a couple years. One thing that I've kind of found in my experience, and I'm curious to hear if this lines up with yours, is kind of the idea that, people have so much potential inside themselves, so much potential. And oftentimes all it takes is just the tiniest little poke in the right direction, or the tiniest little change to happen, or somebody else to do something for them. And then their mind is just completely open to this new opportunity or new way that they can reach their own maximum potential. So I'm curious if that's kind of lines up with some of the stories that you see at 321.
One of the things that's really cool is you see it in the parents, and the parents of our employees. These people have literally been in our employees' lives for as long as they've been around, but every once in a while they'll come and they'll show up at the end of the day and say their son or daughter is working the cash register. And they'll come up to me and they'll be like, are you sure he or she can be doing this? And I'm like, yes, he's been doing it all day. He's been doing it for weeks. He can do the cash register. I have no issue with this. And they start crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? And the parents will say to me I didn't know that my son or daughter was capable of this. And I mean, I see some of these employees and just, I see them working and I see like what they're able to pick up, and it's amazing. And I think that sometimes even their parents don't always know to like let them rise to that level and like rise to that potential. And I think, I mean, it's their parents. Like, talk about changing perspectives and opening minds. Like, these people, these community, this group of the community has already got this amazing life experience and amazing perspective, and even they have room to grow. And so I think that that just speaks to the larger community as a whole, and you know what's capable when you do open your mind.
I love it. So I love everything we've been talking about so far, but of course, a big part of this is talking about some of the parts that might not have been so great, and being vulnerable and being transparent. So any parts of the story for you that have been not so easy breezy that maybe you could share?
I mean, it's like you said, it's easy to talk about the good stuff, especially when the good stuff is really good, but there's always the not so good stuff and it does make the good parts seem extra. It makes you appreciate the good parts. But I would say a big transition point for me was, so I started this thing in college, freshman year, student org, pretty much as like basic as it can be, which is fine. But at some point, it was becoming something more real and more significant and more substantial. We were taking on employees. Like, at this point, 321 Coffee is employment for 21 people. And if that were to just go away, I mean, it'd be fine, but it wouldn't be great. And so at some point it was sort of needed to shift towards this nonprofit, shift to be something more significant, and just make the decision that, okay, like, we're really going to go for this. And that was really scary because especially like sophomore year, we weren't at the point where we were super legit. I would still not say we're like the most legit, but I would say now we're pretty substantial. But like, we weren't even open at the farmer's market. And I was sort of put in this position of like, am I going to go all in and take the risk to turn this into something, or am I going to play it safe? And, looking like standing here now, it's like, oh, totally, like, take the risk. But at the time, like, that's a really scary thing because, I mean, it's just this random student org that you started your freshman year. There's no history to it. You have no reason to believe in yourself, really. At the time, I was majoring in biomedical engineering, and my heart was set on med school. So this was going to involve like a complete change of directions for my path. And like, I mean, I say my heart was set on med school. Like, I spent my whole high school experience like riding along in ambulances, shadowing doctors, watching YouTube videos of operations. Like, I was really dead set on med school. And so this was like a really big pivot for me. And then you kind of combine that with, I don't know if you find this, Thomas, like whenever you talk about like, oh yeah, I'm leading a company, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I definitely get some people who are like, okay, like, that's cute, and I don't, it could be age, it could be like whatever it is, but you combine that with like, oh yeah, I'd like to be a doctor. Like, people are like, oh yeah, like, you go do that. Like, that's amazing. And I would say that people are still supportive, but there's definitely a little bit of question of like, is this really going to happen? And I understand it, like, a lot of people can say that they want to do something, but it doesn't always get done. And so that just sort of like transition and pivot towards wanting to like go all in on this was really scary. And it was really difficult to make that decision. I did end up changing majors. I have not looked at anything medical in a really long time. So I am hoping to pursue this after graduation. It's still scary. It's still like so much pressure, some insecurities of like, is this really going to work out for me? Is this really where I want to be? And I do feel like, yes, this is where I want to be. So now it's just a matter of making it happen.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really do appreciate it. Is there any advice that you would have for somebody else who's in maybe a similar position? They're thinking about going out on a limb and taking a big risk, starting something, or maybe they're dealing with some doubt from other people like you were just speaking about?
I would say that what really helped me like get confidence in doing it was, I mean, literally like thinking about the worst case scenario. And for me, like, that worst case scenario was I dedicate my like college career towards growing this company. Maybe I do it for a little bit after graduation, but if it works, then we're great. But if it doesn't work, like, what do I lose? And luckily, like, I wasn't going to lose that much. I really do believe that like in doing this, I'm learning every day. I'm doing things that I've never been doing. I'm getting my hands really deep in business and just different parts of the company. And if it fails, well, I would have given it my best shot. And like, for me, I sort of had this realization that I would rather try and fail than regret not trying. And so I would say like that nugget is really what keeps me like, okay, like I'm going to keep going. And even if it doesn't work out, I'm comfortable with trying and failing. But I think that I would, like I said, I think I would really regret, like just in my head, like, man, I wonder what would have happened if I had gone all in. I wonder what I could have accomplished if I was able to work 40 hours a week on this or more, every day after graduation. Like, what could I have done with it? What could it have grown into? What impact could it have made? And I think that if you can have that clarity and feel confident that by doing it, you're not going to lose significantly, why not do it?
That's awesome. Do you have any advice when it comes to managing relationships? Because I know you have a lot of different relationships with co-founders, with employees, with donors, with other people who have been a part of your journey and your story. And just any advice you have for me or for anybody else who's interested in starting something with a team?
I say this a lot, but I truly do mean it. It's the people that have gotten 321 Coffee to where it is today. It's not just me. And I think that is, at least for us, like what I've found has been the key to our success. It's the other students who are willing to give so much of their time and so much of their energy to this every day. It's the parents who buy into what we're trying to do and are willing to drive the hour from Rocky Mount every week for their son or daughter to volunteer. It's the employees who want to learn, who come to work every day excited to contribute. It's, like you said, the customers, the board, the advisors, the mentors. It's so many people. And I think that not losing sight of that is everything, because I mean, especially as like a leader, you can do so much more when you have a team and when you really trust your team and your team trusts you and everyone feels valued. I think that that's another really important part. And I mean, look at it in what we're trying to do with our mission. Like what our goal is for these adults with disabilities to have a place where they feel valued. Everyone wants to feel valued. Your board wants to feel valued, your customers. And I think it's so important to remind people and really reiterate so that they know and they trust that they are valued, they are part of this success, they are part of the team. Even if it's just showing up every week to get a cup of coffee, that's huge. Like, that is such a big part of it. Even if it's not the pro bono lawyer or the real estate broker, there's all different parts of what goes into making a company successful, especially one that is a little bit more relationship based.
I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on, why would you say that this concept and this mindset of empowering others is so important?
Everyone wants to contribute and wants to have something that they're proud of. I think that that's just an internal aspect that so many human beings have. And I think sometimes that comes naturally to somebody. They have a platform that they're able to really make use of, but that's not for everyone. And I think it's important to, especially if you're in a position where you have a lot of runway to run with or room to grow, to just keep that in mind and keep that perspective that not everyone may have that opportunity available to them. And so what can you do to give back? And especially, I'm sure you feel as Thomas, but I feel incredibly grateful just of the support that I've received from mentors, from faculty, from my family. And I know for a fact that I would not be here today if it wasn't for a number of those people in my life who have just supported me and like led me and helped me develop this. And I think that keeping that perspective, especially as we become further along in our careers of, okay, like we need to turn around and figure out who we can help. And whether that's employees in your own company or just mentees that you can advise who are sort of like the next people behind us.
I love that you brought up the concept of mentoring, because I think it's so important. One thing that I found, and I'm really curious just in your experience if it lines up as well, but a lot of people are really hesitant to reach out to mentors, reach out to people who might be able to help them, because they think, oh, they're too busy. They probably have a lot on their plate. They don't want to talk to somebody like me. They don't have time for that. But what I've found just in my personal experience is that if you don't reach out to people and ask for their help, you're actually doing them a disservice, because people really want to pitch in. They want to help you to achieve whatever mission or vision that you're working towards. Does that kind of line up with what you've heard? And I'm also just curious to hear some of the tactics and strategies you've used to surround yourself with this fantastic group of mentors that I know you have.
You're exactly right. Like, it's all about just reaching out. And, maybe they are too busy. They'll let you know, no harm, no foul. But I always think about it, like if roles were reversed, every once in a while I'll get an email from like an incoming freshman or something. And they're like, I was just wondering if you'd be willing to, got this idea, I'd love to talk through with it. And I get so excited because, they're trusting me with my advice. They want to know my thoughts, what I've learned. And they now view me as someone who can help them, which is a really, really flattering thing to kind of tell somebody. And I think if you kind of keep that perspective of when you are reaching out to a potential mentor or someone who you really want to learn from, that's a really nice thing that you are saying to them. Like you were saying, I really value your opinions. I really respect what you've accomplished. And I would love if you're willing to help me. And just like you said, we're very fortunate in that there are a number of people in this world who are just caring. They want to help. And if you give them a way to help, I bet like 9 times out of 10, they will help.
I totally agree. I want to pivot a little bit and chat about, the future of 321 and what you're trying to do. And also, I know you and I have chatted a lot recently about marketing and about the power of storytelling. Could you speak towards that a little bit? Like, what have you done to grow 321? Of course, there's a large grassroots effect of it, just people telling other people, but also through social media, through video, through storytelling. Speak to that a little bit about kind of the power of storytelling.
Quickly, just like about what's like our plan with like growing 321. So we back in October had decided like, okay, yeah, let's go for a storefront. Like we're ready. We've got this support. We're pretty confident in like how to run a coffee shop. Let's go do this. And we had made all this great progress. We had raised significant amount of donations. We had put together this great team of like the architect and the designer and the broker. We're like touring space and we've got like negotiating a deal and a verbal agreement. And then COVID hits. And so that was sort of this like, great. And, stuff started pulling out and understandably. And so it sort of left us in a really like, what the heck do we do now? So that's when we pivoted towards the roasting, which I think is like a really great opportunity for us. And now that's, I think, where we're going to put a lot of our time and attention to, like, at least in the next couple of months of like growing that and finding ways to have still an impact just in a new capacity. So that was sort of like the first part of your question of like what's happening with 321 growth wise. As for like storytelling, I think, you're absolutely right. Like we've talked a lot about the importance of like sharing the stories because like we've recognized, like, I think it's the people that make 321 Coffee what it is. And I think it's the people that people want to know about. It's the employees, it's the managers, it's the directors, it's the board, and like finding ways to really share who everyone is that makes up 321 Coffee, where they came from, what they're doing with the organization, why they're a part of it, because it is amazing like how everyone sort of fits together. And I think that we've started trying to find new ways to do this. We do like every week we highlight a different worker. We call it Worker Wednesday on 321 Coffee social media, and just find a new way to share more about one of our baristas or our managers, posting videos about one of our employees. He started a weekly video series called Matthew's Minutes. His name is Matthew. And he shares about different parts of the organization and sort of his thoughts about it. And I go and like record it and just kind of like splice some clips together. It's so fun, I'll be there recording and I'm just like shocked at like what he is coming out with, what he's sharing, what his thoughts are, his energy, his creativity, and the response on social media. Like people are just loving it, which is so great. And I've had so many people saying like, so I was watching Matthew's Minutes last week and he mentioned da-da-da. And it's like, oh my gosh, like these people are now talking about Matthew's Minutes as if it's like some real thing. And it is, but it's just been cool. So I think stuff like that we did over COVID. We posted a video and it was a series of all of everyone like in their community. So like I mentioned, the baristas, the managers, the directors, and the board dancing. And it was just like a 6-second clip of everyone dancing back to back to back to back. And it was put to Taylor Swift's Me song. And like, I just love that video because like what the song is about, like the lyrics, it's like, I'm the only one of me, but that's the fun of me. And, it's all just sort of this, like, everyone's unique, everyone's individual, but here we are together as a group. And like, the camaraderie around that video too has just been so cool to see people so excited about. And I think it's totally like what you've said, it's telling the story, it's finding new ways to share who the people are that make up the organization. And I think people just love learning about that so much more than they love learning about like, we sold 300 cups of coffee today and, whatever, like the business part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Can you speak towards a little bit? I know I've been really impressed with the emails you've been sending out lately, and I've loved receiving those and kind of feeling like I'm a little bit more a part of your story as a result. Could you share kind of, how you got started with that and what the structure of those is so somebody could learn from you?
So I started sending out a mentor email on a monthly basis, all because Thomas told me to. I think it was some ploy to learn more about 321, but I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. So every month I sort of share some updates about like what we're working on, what's next, and what some obstacles are. And so I think that gives a really good point of reflection for me as to like every month. It's really cool. Like, it's like, oh man, like last month we just said like, I'm thinking about starting roasting. And now I'm telling people that the roaster just arrived, and like to see that progress. And I think, so I've kind of been compiling a list of just mentors in my life. And it's also cool, every time I meet someone new and I'm like, this person is so great, like adding them to that list. And just, I think it's a way to keep your community close to you and keep people top of mind. I think that I've been very fortunate in that there are a number of people willing to support 321, but the reality of meeting with all of them on a regular basis, that's not going to be feasible. And so this, I think, is a really great way to keep people engaged, keep people up to date. And then when I say, hey, an obstacle is I want to do Facebook advertising and I have no idea, and Thomas gets that email and so that's like, oh, wait a second, like I'm great at Facebook advertising, like I can teach you. That's exactly what we're going for. And that's what I've seen is happening. And, even just people saying like, responding and saying, I'm just so excited to see this progress. Like, I can't wait to come out this weekend to visit you, even if it's that little impact, that's huge for us. And so I'm so glad, Thomas, that you recommended we do that. I think it's had such great results. And I would recommend anyone do that if they've got that network of that circle of people in their life.
I'm so glad I was able to help you with that little idea. And I think it'll take you a really long way. Like for me personally, just getting to hear a little bit of your story on a monthly basis, I always feel like we are a little bit closer, even if we haven't talked for a little while. I understand what's going on. I understand what you're struggling with, maybe how I could help, those sorts of things. So I think it's a really cool impact. And I've got a question for you, and this is something I want to try and ask everybody who comes on is, what is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received?
So this sort of goes back to when I was in that, I received this advice when I was thinking about switching majors, but I think that it does have like a larger application than just like majors. But the advice was, he said, it was Tony Kershaw. He said, you need to be, because again, majors, in a place where when it sucks the most, it's like, because it will suck, you will want to keep going. And he was saying that again, it was in terms of majors. So it was in terms of like, I was in biomedical engineering, in these like orgochemistry, like electricity and magnetism physics, like these like really dense stuff. And he was saying like, you need to be like, if you're not gonna want to power through that and like go the BME route, then you shouldn't be there. And I think that speaks so much broader to just career aspirations and reflecting on where you are in your life, because I think that it's so often people feel like, I need to go get this one job because then I can get my MBA because then I can start a company. And if job A is going to suck for you and the MBA is going to suck for you, then why are you doing that? You don't need to do some of these things just because you feel pressure from society to do that. If you're not happy, if you're not loving what you're doing, then I think it's important to think like, is there something else that I should be doing instead? Because time is valuable. And if you really want to make an impact, be purposeful with the way that you spend it.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to give you an opportunity just to tell us a little bit about your long-term vision for 321, where you see it going. And it's totally okay if you don't have that all figured out yet, but also just, how can people get involved? How can people get involved with your why, your mission that you're trying to achieve here?
My long-term vision is, so if you're sort of thinking about the problem we're trying to solve, it's that people with disabilities don't have employment opportunities. 321 Coffee is a great step towards solving that solution. There are a lot of other coffee shops with similar missions, which I think is so great to see more and more people kind of starting to think along these lines. But I would say the solution to that problem is not for everyone with a disability to be a barista. So like when I think of the future of 321, I don't think about like some mega franchise of 321 Coffee where it's like the next Starbucks, because again, it's a little limiting, honestly. Like I don't want for, you're someone with a disability, your only job potential is to be a barista. And so I think about really expanding on the brand and taking this concept and applying it to other places. So why not have 321 Pizza or 321 Shopping or 321 Consulting Company, you know, taking this concept, because there's no secret sauce of coffee. You know, these people can do anything if they have that opportunity. And so it's finding more ways to incorporate this mission into different concepts. And so that's really what excites me about the future. I think a really great first step towards this is with the roasting, because, you know, it is still within the coffee industry, but it's a much different type of job, and it's a much different part of the industry, you know, more of like the supplying role. And, you know, you're gonna have to learn how to package and sell and track your shipments. And so that's where I think of like the future of 321 going. I would say as for like people interested in getting involved, that's always huge for us. People joining our community. I mean, it is so helpful. Come visit our shop, you know, come meet our employees, come in, experience it, and then tell your friends about it. The more people that know about us and continue coming, that's really what keeps us going. When you tell your friends, that's just creating more awareness for this mission. I really hope to one day be, especially in Raleigh, like recognized as like have our brand really be recognized for the impact in our mission. And so like I want, if you're a Thomas wearing your 321 Coffee shirt, I want people to see that and be like, oh, I know what that is. Like I know the impact that you're making. I know that you as Thomas wearing that shirt is representing inclusion. And I think that that's the ways that I see people really helping 321 take this next step. It's coming, it's sharing the word, telling people to come to the farmers market, telling people to follow us on social media, buying the t-shirt, repping the brand. All of that is just huge.
I'm so excited to hopefully get some more people involved. And I know already for me around Raleigh, most people I talk to have already heard of the brand. So it's really cool to see.
That's so cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, even just within our little ecosystem, our little bubble, you know, so many people have already heard about it, but I'm sure it's going to start to gain even more traction. I'm really excited to see that future and be there alongside with you and help in any way that I can, for sure. So as we're wrapping things up, you know, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you if they want to chat more about 321 or they want to come visit the shop?
Absolutely. So 321, we've got a website, just 321coffee.com. If you search that into all the different social media sites, we should pop up as well. You can reach me by email. It's on the website. Always happy to chat. Would love to talk with someone interested in getting involved at 321 or just, you know, wants to talk about life or any of these lessons. I'm very approachable and I love talking to people. So always here.
Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing your story. I feel truly privileged just having the opportunity to hear a little bit more about it. And I know that a lot of people are going to be able to take a lot away from this conversation. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for including me and including 321. It means a lot.